everybody. Welcome to our third workshop. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to get started on this workshop. I think you all are going to enjoy our guest speaker this evening. I think gonna learn a lot. Our topic of our workshop this evening is on the topic of how do I prepare for a professional interview? So you're going into the interview, maybe you've gone to career fairs, maybe your mentors hooked you up and connected you with someone at their company. Maybe you've gotten some referrals somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. You are about to step into the interview. Maybe you've already had interviews before. This workshop is about how to think about interviews differently. We are bringing in guest speakers who are experts on this topic from around the world to give you insight and wisdom on how to make the most out of the professional interview. So this workshop is going to be about 45 minutes long with, and I encourage you to ask questions throughout the workshop. I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the workshop, which I'll have you answer. That's how you get credit for being here. You're now midway through the program so far. You should have already had your first conversation with your mentor. Hopefully you've already started setting up your second conversation with your mentor. If you have not, or you're struggling to get in touch with your mentor, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We need to take care of you so then you can get connected and make the most out of this program. So really, this program is all about how can you prepare for the first professional interview. Really, what you're selling your interviewer on is your ability, your essentially your future potential opportunity. Essentially, you are selling them on your potential, because at the end of the day, people are not expecting you to come in and be the expert on XYZ topic. They are expecting you to be a willing learner and someone that's eager to gain knowledge and to be a better professional. If you can convey that, you will get the opportunity. But it will be competitive, especially in highly competitive industries. And I know that anybody that's in this program is more likely than not going into a career that's competitive. I mean, you would not have gotten a mentor had you not wanted to take your level, take your career, take your life to the next level. So with that said, I want to encourage you to keep your head up, keep applying, put yourself out there for more opportunities, and leverage the insight and knowledge that you're getting in these workshops to make yourself and to help you better prepare yourself for the interview. Now, before we get started into our main program, I want to ask you a quick question, and that question is, when it comes to the interview, how do you want people to feel about you? In other words, what feeling are you trying to convey about yourself when you are in an interview? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think if we are more intentional about how we want other people to feel about us in the interview, our likelihood of actually having that happen increases substantially. I mean, I've talked about in past workshops, strategy, story, state, which I will talk about in a moment, but this is a really big part of the story part. Like, what is the story that you're telling yourself? Now, I think sometimes we can interpret that as psyching ourselves up, getting ourselves confident, getting ourselves pumped for why we're going to be successful. And I think that's great. But I think if we could take it to another level, that being intentional about how we want other people to perceive us. So if we want them to perceive us as confident, or if we want them to perceive us as knowledgeable, or if we want them to perceive us as eager to learn and having potential, it could be a variety of things. But what I really want you to do is I really want you to identify feelings that you want other people to feel about you when you enter their world. Because you can be intentional about that. Your likelihood of having them actually feel that is much greater. But if you don't set the intention, you have no idea how they're going to feel about you. You've got really no control over it. But if you intentionally think to yourself, I want people to think of me as confident. Okay, what am I going to do that's going to convey and convey confidence? Really, it's all about whatever that feeling you want to convey. Make sure that you are taking actions and being intentional about ensuring that other people view you that way, and that you come in trying to actively think about actions that you can take that will help other people perceive you in that light. So let's start under the next part of our workshop. Now, I've talked about this in the past before, and I've talked about this in previous workshops, but one of the big things that I always love to stress is the 3 keys to success in the program. There are 3 of them. That is your strategy, that is your story, that is your state. I bring it up every single time because it is that important. And the reason why it's important is because if we are not honing our strategy, honing our story, honing our state, we are not setting ourselves up for successful. If we let someone else drive our roadmap for us, we could end up in a location that we do not want to be. But if we are intentional about our story, if we're intentional about our strategy, if we are intentional about our state, we are much more likely to get to where we would like to go. It's kind of like the law of attraction. When we put it out there, and we put it out to more people, and we're more intentional about what we want to accomplish, and we're more intentional about how we are going to convey our bodies and ourselves to other people, the likelihood that it comes back to us is much greater. So I want to talk about state. State is the most important thing. Like physically, where are you at in your life, in your world? What is going on? I don't care how stressed you are. I don't care how mad you are. I don't care how dejected you are. I don't care of anything negative going on in your world. If you can get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, especially for the interview, you will be successful. I'm a big proponent of power poses. I'm a big proponent of screaming at the top of your lungs and dancing out. In fact, I'd like to do that with you right now. So for the next 30 seconds, what I like you to do is I like you to stand up. I like you to shimmy it out. I like you to shake it out. I like you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just scream at the top of your lungs at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go, because you've got nothing to lose. I don't care if it's a popularity contest. I don't care if you're in a library. I don't care if you're in a house. What do you have to lose? This is not a coolness effort here. It's about making an impact and preparing yourself physically for being successful. What is the price of success? Getting yourself into a state conducive for being successful. Maybe looking a little weird to some of your colleagues, coworkers, or peers, but what is that cost to you in the long run? Nothing. They're going to say, hey, what were you doing? Why were you dancing? Why were you screaming at the top of your lungs? You say, hey, I'm getting myself in a state conducive for being successful. Maybe they've never heard about it before. Maybe they've never learned. You can educate them on this. So don't worry about how other people are perceiving you when you are going to get yourself into a state that's going to level up your game, especially when it comes to the interview. Now, you may not want to do this in the office of a business that you are about to interview in, but you could certainly do it in the bathroom, in a bathroom stall. Get yourself into a 2-minute power pose. Stand up like Superman or Superwoman, or put your arms out like as if you're a star. There's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, but you should be doing something, because if you're not, you are letting the way that other people perceive you essentially come up to chance. And you don't want to chance it, especially for the opportunity of a lifetime. And you have no idea which opportunity is the opportunity of a lifetime. It may not be this job. It could be the next one. If you make a positive impression in an interview and you may not land that job, that interviewer could have really loved how you interviewed, and that person may not be at that company for forever, or they might be, and they might come up with a new job. They might reach out to you personally to have you come and interview. It's all about the relationship. It's all about how they perceive you. It's all about that impression you leave. Your state is critical. Now, what is the story you tell yourself for why you are going to be successful? This is something we kind of did earlier when I asked you, how do you want other people to feel about you in the interview? This is a great exercise to prepare yourself for a professional interview. If you are intentional about how you want other people to feel about you, you are going to put yourself into a position to succeed, because then you're much more likely to manifest that outcome. Literally, law of attraction, putting it out there. I want other people to feel XYZ about me. Confident, smart, intelligent, well prepared. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's a weakness that you have, but you like to have them perceive it as a strength. Maybe it's a strength that you have that you'd really like to amplify even as a greater strength. Doesn't matter, but set an intention of something. Because if you don't set an intention of something, it could be wild in terms of what they actually perceive of you. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are the things that you're going to do to make the most out of this interview? Are you going to come prepared with questions? Are you going to come prepared with doing background research on the company? Are you going to make an intentional, focused effort on taking notes during the conversation, so then you're asking poignant, direct questions to the interviewer that are relevant about his or her life? Are you going to do the things that you need to do to be the most successful in an interview, or are you not? So the strategies you're going to learn from our guest speaker later on in this workshop, I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say. But before we jump into our guest speaker, I want to talk about one final thing, and that is getting yourself into a routine that can help you prepare for an interview. One of the things that I like to do, have an accountability partner. This could be it could be anybody. But what you want to do with your accountability is you want to share with your accountability partner 3 things that you learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to get closer to that internship or job. What this does, and you might think this sounds silly, you might think this sounds crazy, it could be another student in the program, it could be a friend of yours, does not matter. But what we've learned, what we've observed is that students who land jobs and internships through this program are substantially more likely to actually land that job and internship if they told other people about their experience. One of the questions we ask at the end of the question is, on average, how many other people did you tell about your experience in the program? What we ended up learning was that when a student told 20 or more people about their experience in Ambition in Motion, their likelihood of also landing their job and internship was substantially higher than students who didn't. There's a direct correlation to you telling more people about your experience and what you're learning in this program. to actually landing the outcomes you like than not. So I want to challenge you to identify an accountability partner. Share with them 3 things that you've learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to help you get closer to landing that job or internship. Now, the other big thing that I want to bring up with you is a referral program. So we are now starting to open up the applications and the signups for next fall. One, I'd love for you to be in part of the program again. You can get a new mentor, you're going to get new content, you're going to learn from new speakers, but more importantly, I want you to encourage other students to get involved as well. We have a referral program for you, so then you are discounted to get in the program next semester. Essentially, anytime that anybody applies, we ask them, how'd you hear about us? If they write in your name, you get credit. If you don't mind being an ambassador for this program, I'm helping encourage other students to get involved and take advantage of this. I would greatly appreciate it because it would help us make a bigger impact on more people, which is really what our goal is. So let's jump into our workshop. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. I'm so excited to transition into this next part of the workshop. Remember to answer the 3 questions that we asked during the workshop. That's how you get credit for being here within 24 hours of the workshop going live. If you got any questions, any concerns, any issues with anything at all, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We will answer those questions, concerns, and issues. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. Hey everybody, I'm so excited for our workshop this evening. We've got an incredible guest for you. We are here with Brad Finkelday. We are going to talk about how to make the most out of this first interview, but really Brad's area of expertise is how to get aligned to where you want to go. And Brad's going to give us some great insight and great tips on really how we can take our lives, our careers, and get us to where we want to be, how we can prepare for the interview, how we can just set ourselves up for success as we work towards where we want to go. Brad is on a mission to help 10,000 people pleasers become confident badasses and do what they love. Brad is a confidence coach and has helped thousands of people live their best lives. Brad, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Garrett. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your mission to helping people really do what they want. And the interview process is definitely a significant part of it. And so many people get caught up in, my resume's got to be the best. My resume's got to be great. And then they don't get the job. They might have a great resume, but they fail at the interview, and it's all about inner confidence. So thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. Let's just jump right in because I think that inner confidence is so crucial. I think as a lot of students, it's our first job or first internship. We're thinking about what we can do to maybe set ourselves apart. I think it's understandable to potentially not have all the confidence in the world because you've not really done this that often. And sometimes you'll see the opposite where you got overconfidence, but you really got very little experience. And so I'd love to, if you could just jump in and share a little bit more about that whole confidence component and how we can get ourselves in the position to be properly, like the proper amount of confidence going into an interview or just preparing for the professional outcome or opportunity that we're trying to get.
Yeah. So even like what you're just sharing, like that proper amount of confidence, right? That's one thing I notice with, clients that I've worked with and people in general around confidence and a lot of different things. There's a perception in our lives that we have to be perfect and that there's a perfection that has to happen. The resume's got to be perfect and right. And I've got to have the suit and I've got to have the perfect dress or I've got to have the power suit or I've got to have the perfect story or whatever. Like our minds are going to make up so much crap, right? And it's really not about perfection. It's all about connection. People don't hire a resume. They hire who you are. They hire the possibility of you, right? And there's so much, our egos want to make up so much stuff to impress other people and compare and like, I'm not like this person. And oh God, I'm not like what the job description shares. Well, the job description is written by a hiring manager who wants a perfect person. They want the ideal candidate and they're shooting for the moon, right? But so many people have messaged me and be like, well, I don't have all the experience on the resume or on the job description. And that's not what you want to remember. You really want to remember if you have now there are some jobs right out there that you have to have the experience, like they need you to hit the floor running, right? But in the cases of, for graduates and people just getting started, you don't have to have all of the experience that they want, right? And there's another misnomer here that I don't have professional experience, right? Well, if you just went through a 4-year, 6-year, 8-year program or whatever it is, or 2-year, 1 year, that's experience. That's part of the experience. A little baby doesn't learn to run a marathon the second day out of the womb, right? It's crying. It's learning, how to live and breathe and crap in his pants. Like, it's at the very beginning. And it's important to remember that, wait a minute, I'm a college graduate. Millions of others have been hired and they didn't have all this experience. Maybe I could be too. And that's the first step, is like really starting to break down and not compare yourself compare yourself to others. And that really helps people to understand that their journey is theirs and unique.
Yeah, I like that. I think that what's interesting, I'd love to learn your thoughts on this. I mean, Tony Robbins has a saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be used both positively and potentially, I guess, negatively. I think it kind of depends on the lens that you use. I think with that notion, with that kind of statement, it's more or less this idea that, I might be able to level myself up, give myself confidence by associating myself with people that I believe I could be just like. But I think that there's obviously negative comparisons where it's thinking to ourselves like, oh, geez, I have to live up to this person.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
So I'm going to practice a skill that people can do in interviewing, right?
Yeah.
So it's a perfect example. I was just in my head, right? Is this interview? We were talking. This is an interview, right? Yeah. And you've got questions and I'm supposed to have answers, right? But we can get caught in our head. So, Garrett, I was really listening to you, and can you just reshare what the essence of your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So the essence of my question is, I would love clarity from you if you could maybe explain a little bit more about what is an appropriate amount, what is a healthy amount of, I guess, understanding of what other people are doing, but also recognizing and living my own path. And does this notion of what Tony Robbins said about you're the average of 5 people that you spend the most time with, does that play any role in what you just said, or was I mishearing you? And maybe I could, I guess, use a little clarification.
Gotcha. So like a healthy amount of, a healthy amount of exactly what? Because there's a few different things you shared there, yes. Right? So let me just break this down first, because we can go in a couple different directions, right? So a healthy amount of what specifically?
Healthy amount of understanding what other people are doing and maybe the bar that I set for myself.
Okay, so a healthy amount of what other people are doing and, what that is for you. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's an unhealthy version of comparing yourself to other people, and I think that there's a healthy way of doing that.
Okay, so what you're really asking is how much I compare myself to others in preparation and also stand in my own uniqueness.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I was asking a confusing question.
Oh, no worries. So even like in this, like I was using reflective listening as a real good example of like, sometimes someone can ask a lot of questions and you're like, man, I'm not sure what they just asked, because you're comparing yourself to others. It's so fast, right? So I was trying to give an example of that inside there, right? Kind of snuck that in on you. I just kind of felt through it. So to answer that, it's like you should know what's generally expected in an interview, right? You should know exactly, not exactly. So I just caught that. You don't need to know exactly. You should know what's expected in an interview, right? You can do your research on Glassdoor. You can do your research in different various websites that are out there. But basically, being prepared. Who is the company? Who's the person interviewing? If you can find out, what's their general style like, and doing your due diligence and doing your research of, is this a big corporation and they're very, corporate-y, or do they have like a unique flair to them? Just do your due diligence and prepare yourself for what that company is all about. And how can you be yourself inside of that interview while you've done your preparation? A lot of people really try to get the answers perfect, or try to show up with the person is like, and they show up with this energy of nice to meet you, and you feel like a robot, and your hands are all sweaty, and you're sweating your butt off, and you're like, the thing that most people are thinking is, I hope they like me. I really want the job secretly, but I hope you like my shirt. I hope my breath isn't bad. Like, all of those things are ruminating in our heads as we're going through an interview, and they cause so much discomfort. The other person, for most people in HR, and most people, that are hiring managers especially, it's not their favorite part of the job. No one likes to say, yeah, you're not good enough. Like I like you as a person maybe, but we really need someone that's going to do the job. Like, they don't like that either. So there's this, when you have two of these people, this guy's nervous over here, this girl's nervous over here, it's just a bunch of nervous energy. Not a good fit, So the best way you can prepare for that is, one, do your due diligence, like I shared, know the company, and practice some of your answers inside of it. But when you do that, don't aim for perfection in the interview. Aim for connection, and your goal should be have a wonderful conversation, like a wonderful, engaging conversation that I like to have the energy of, like, you're at a restaurant or you're at a bar, right? And you're just connecting with someone, and you're getting to know them, and you're really, you are being professional. I don't want to misconstrue that. Like, you're being professional, but you're bringing the energy and the essence of who you are through that connection and conversation. And one of the greatest things you can do is to be curious about another person. I was just on a phone call with an old client the other day, and he was sharing his story, and this is really cool. I want to share this real quick. He went in to go for an interview to get into an MBA program, and he's from Venezuela. And he busted his butt just to get there, which is a whole other story, right? And he's standing there with the dean because he had the cojones to go there. And at first he was like, I only got a 4.3 or like a 4.32 on his SATs or ACTs. I forget what the thing was, the test he took. But he didn't have the score, the 550, to get into the MBA program. He took it twice, and he was under a deadline. And the dean took a phone call right after he told him no, like strict, like, dude, you didn't pass. I'm so sorry, but we have guidelines. You have to pass in order to get into the MBA program. And at that point, they were not connected. He was just, I really wanted the program. I really want to find a way in. The guy took the phone call, and here's the key thing. My old client looked around the room, and he was like, this dude's really into baseball. So am I. This guy loves baseball. He could tell. And the guy hung up the phone, and he's like, what were we talking about? The guy like almost completely forgot that he just rejected him, from getting an MBA program. And they started talking small talk about baseball. And by the end of the conversation, the guy was like, I'll get you into the program. He connected with him. There was more conversation that happened, but they went back and forth, and he talked about his love of baseball, and then the other guy talked about his love of baseball, and the guy was like, what are you here for again? He's like, I'm trying to get in the MBA program, and I haven't passed my thing twice. He goes, okay, let me make a few phone calls. We'll get you in. And when you connect with someone and you show them who you really are and that you care about them too, and you guys have this common bond, man, like our common bond. Sometimes I have trouble with bigger words sometimes. But when you have that common bond and you can create it, and I believe that almost all of us humans can find something that we're connected with, right? Magic happens, and we open up, and the other persons can open up, and they see themselves in you. And then they will open the doorway for you. And I'm not saying it's going to happen every single time, But when it does, that's when magic occurs, and it's really cool.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. So are you saying that for these students who are going in their interviews right now, that, I mean, I think there's, well, I have often seen this where a student who I've interviewed for, let's say, an internship role or something like that, they will come in with whatever their elevator, pre-prepared. These are my responses to whatever questions I think you're going to answer. You're going to ask me. And sometimes I don't even ask the question they think that they're answering. They just have something prepared and like, I heard that word. It goes with this answer, and they just start answering and regurgitating it. And that's not what I'm looking for. Are you trying to say that by being looser and being more conversational and just being open to wherever the conversation goes and trying to find common bonds, that I'm much more likely to stick or be stickier than someone who's very rigid and like, here are my pre-prepared, answers to all these questions?
Yeah. So the key thing in there is if you stop listening right now, be curious. Be curious about be curious about the person, okay? But be curious about the company. Be curious about what they're up to. Be curious of how to help solve their bigger issues. They're hiring you to help them move to the next level. And if you demonstrate that you can help solve some of their biggest issues or that particular hiring manager's biggest issues, man, they're going to see you as a relief to some of their problems. And the more you can do that and do it in a way that's like nice and natural, like, how can I help you? Not how can I help you, instead of look at me, look at me, look at me, look at my perfect answers.
Yes. Okay. So let me take one quick moment. I want to ask the students in the audience who are watching this right now, what is something that, I guess, a list of questions. What are questions you would like to ask an interviewer when you go into your next interview? What are questions that you would be curious to know about a company that maybe you've never asked before? Write them in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think that would be really fascinating to me. I think as a lot of students, we want to keep it to the traditionally generally asked questions, I guess, area. But I think what you're kind of saying, Brad, is you have got the free reign. If you're curious about something, ask it, because shoot, if no one else is asking it, that sets you apart. Am I on point there?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pull up some questions right now that I think are very powerful and will help some of the people. I wish I would have had these pulled up in the very beginning, but it won't take me very long. I've got these on my what to ask in an interview cheat sheet. These are really cool questions. And I want to shout out to Cultivated Culture here. These are from him, Austin Belchak. And but he has some really powerful questions, right? And like one of them
on our workshop last semester.
Oh, what'd you say?
Austin was a guest on our workshop last semester. So that's awesome.
Okay, cool. I love his stuff, and it's awesome. And so, like, what's some of the biggest challenges you're facing right now? And that really gets into the curiosity, right? And then, when you get like another one's like, what's the most unexpected lesson you've learned, while working here? And so having some questions that are about them and about the business and about the business goals are really cool, are really powerful. And it really shows the other person on the other end, like, this guy's prepared, this woman's prepared, and they're eager to learn about, what's going on. And the trick inside of this, what also happens mentally, is the other person goes, wow, this guy's got this person's confident, like they're, and the reason that is because you're standing for yourself too. And a very, one of the key things that shows up whenever I help people prepare for interviews is when you ask questions, especially from a point of view of, is this going to be another toxic environment? Is this going to be a culture that I really hate? Is this going to be a company that's going to fail in 6 months? You're standing for yourself. You're standing for, I want a good company to work for. And you should, right? Because if you don't ask questions, it's going to show a lack of confidence, and it's going to show, hey, I really just kind of want a job. And no one really wants to hire someone that just wants a job. They want someone that's eager. They want someone that's going to show up, that's going to be responsible inside of that. And that makes a world of difference. Like, People will help each other all day long inside of the job, but they can't help you with the eagerness, you know?
I love that intentionality about the culture. Let me take another moment to ask the students another question really quick.
Yeah. And I think I think it's wonderful to have that intention. And uh, here's a point with culture. Don't let a pool table or a ping pong table um, uh, make you think that they've got a good culture, or free snacks and free soda, whatever, you know. That's not culture. That's stuff. In my opinion, you want to look for a company's culture where they show where leadership shows who they are and demonstrates it. You know, they demonstrate that they care about their people. I can't remember the name of the company, but he took a stand and he said, you know what, everybody here is going to get $70,000 a year, me including. I'm not going to take more than that. Like, that's a real stand inside of a culture. Like, now that's kind of to the extreme, but you want to look for what you really want at the essence of the culture, whatever that is important to you and whatever you care about, right? And you want it to be reflected. And you should ask questions like, how's your culture demonstrated day to day? You know, is it really being lived, or is it in a real example, or is it just a mission statement on the wall and the executive is, you know, pushing people and throwing people out of the place, all, you know, like they're angry people or something, you know? I had a client of mine that he called me and he's like, my CEO just got arrested. She was pushing people, you know, like she was assaulting people, you know? And he's like, this is a horrible work environment. And it all starts with leadership, you know? And
How can you decipher that in the interview? Like, I feel like often I'll see the questions students ask, like, oh, what is your culture like? But that's not, I don't feel like that's a good question for understanding the culture. I mean, what are your thoughts?
yeah, no, I think, you know, I'll refer to Austin's questions, you know, because they're such great examples. I mean, I'm not going to try to reinvent them. It's like, what's an unexpected lesson you've learned, you know? And then you could wrap that into, what's an unexpected culture lesson you've learned around here? You know, how, what's an example of passion around here? You know, is everybody out the door at 5 o'clock and don't really care? Or are they, you know, really driven to, you know, see the results through in whatever the product they're designing or coming up with, or whatever it might be, right? So really just getting to the demonstration part.
Yeah. I know one of the biggest things that you talk about is alignment. Mm-hmm. If I have offers from multiple companies, how can I ensure that I'm aligning myself? How can I essentially identify what my own priority list is in terms of what I'm looking for in the company? You know, how do I know how to weigh pay to culture to commute if I have to commute, or potentially having to travel, the type of work I'm doing? How do I weigh all of those factors into multiple offers?
Yeah. So how do you weigh all of the, you know, making sure you're aligned to making sure the job and the culture is aligned to your values and to what you want as well, and where it's a good fit, it's a win-win. That's what I'm hearing. Is really being clear with yourself first, and really taking some time to say, you know, do I want a small company to work for? Do I want a big company to work for? Do I want a large, you know, global conglomerate that's all over the world? Because there's advantages to working for a big corporation, and there's also advantages to working for a small corporation. There's advantages to working for a profit, and there's advantages, a public company, and there's also advantages of working for, you know, a non-public and a private company, right? So it's all about really being clear of what is important to you inside of that. And then that's reflected in their culture. So taking the time to say, do I want to work for a big company, small company, a company that cares about the environment or, doesn't care about the environment, really being clear of like what you care about. And then is that a value inside of the company? And then, in your questions in the interview, ask about those things. Like, hey, I really care about the environment. How are you guys, this might be a little bit in the weeds of things, but if they're a company in their solar power company and they really care about the environment, but you can see some things that are demonstrated, like they really don't care. They're just in here for the profit, you can tell, right? And then when you get multiple offers, you can be like, you know what, I got an offer from this company, but they're really not congruent with what they say. So something's off there, right? So it all starts with knowing what you want first and knowing what your values are, and then aligning that, with the offers that you do get. And there's always a little give and take. So it's not about perfection, but it's about having that North Star and saying, this is the direction I'm going. Because our careers are going to change and we're going to shift and change over time. But as long as you're heading in that direction, that's the best place. That's the best foot forward, right?
That's awesome.
I'm still working with my lips and stuff here, getting the words
Good.
out.
That was cool. I like that. I like the way that you laid that out. I want to take a moment to ask the students a question. What are you looking for in a company culture? What are you looking for in terms of your own personal alignment of like what your value system is? Is it primarily money? Is it primarily the type of work you're doing? Is it primarily the industry? How big of a company do you want to work for? Post that in the comments below. I would love to learn essentially what you're looking for in an offer, and just put it out there. I'd love for everybody in the community to kind of learn that from each other. I think that's a really, good way of starting that. Maybe you haven't thought about it yet, but this is a great point to start. Maybe you started ruminating on this sort of thing of like, well, I don't know what I would want, but I think I want this. And that's a great start. At least if you've identified something, that's a great starting point. Having no plan is not a great plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Not having a plan will get you exactly where you are.
No, that's exactly it. So a final couple of things when it comes to the interview itself. Are there any other key factors that maybe we've not covered? Are there any non-traditional factors that maybe we haven't thought about that we should be thinking about when it comes to the interview itself?
Let's see. So we've covered, the energy, right? And making sure your goal is to have a great conversation, being curious. And so those are the two biggest things that I can think of off the top of my head. Other things that neediness we haven't covered. If you come into an interview absolutely having to have that job, it's going to show up. I got to have it. Just like you could say like inside of dating, when you show up with like, oh my God, I've got to have this because I need the money, you are going to set yourself up for failure, and you could be the perfect candidate. And it's probably just, it's not going to go well. They're going to catch that. They're going to pick up on that energy, and don't misinterpret neediness with eagerness. They're different. It's like you're eager to do it, but you also have boundaries, right? You know what you want, and you're going to go for it, but you're not going to do it at the detriment of yourself. You're not going to blow over people. You're not going to kill someone on the way to do it, but you're eager to do it. Needy person will plow over people and, run them over and not really care what's happening, right? And not really be listening either. So really listening, is another powerful tip, is like, just be curious. I'll repeat that over and over and over because it's made such a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I think neediness is critical. I think, or rather, not being needy is critical. But I think on the topic of neediness, I've observed this a couple times in interviews where, and this sometimes happens especially with students, where they'll start saying all things that they need or that they want out of the job itself, but not as much about what they're contributing to the role or how they're going to plug in and be able to really make an impact on the company. Do you have any, thoughts on how to maybe reframe that, or get themselves into get a student into a mental framework of how do I prepare for something like that?
So answering the questions of like how they can best prepare themselves for the like why do you want to work here kind of questions.
Bingo, that's exactly it.
Yeah. The way that I help my clients is I do want people to be prepared, right? But I don't want them to be perfect. And stories is the best way to tell that. And having your story ready and prepared to share is how you can really. I was coaching a guy about a month ago, and I'm going to use his story. This guy was nervous about getting. He was a PhD graduate, very smart guy, very analytical, and he was going to be interviewed for a company, an oil and gas company. And he wanted to interview with this company because they had a passion for helping the environment out. Like they were making a difference inside of it. I don't remember the name of it. But I helped him with this. I said, why do you really care? Like I like oil, I like gas, but I don't give a toot, Like it doesn't, like there's no passion there for me. And so as you're listening to what I'm sharing, I want you to be thinking about your life, about why did you spend 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 years of your life studying? Why? Who gives a crap, right? But why do you care? And here's what I want you to listen for. What's the moment in your life when you realized you cared about that thing so much? And here's what he shared with me. And I asked him the same thing. Obviously. He shared, it took him, it can take a minute. And sometimes you have to be willing to swallow your throat. Like, oh crap. And it's usually one of the first thoughts or stories that come to your mind. But you got to really level with yourself. Like, okay. And it's usually around childhood. So here was his story. He grew up playing in the woods and he loved it. Like he just effing loved playing in the woods. Like he'll go out there all the time and just do his thing and just get dirty and just have fun. Right. And it meant a lot to him. Well, as a kid, his family moved and he came back a few years later and he went back to his house and they had torn a lot of the woods down to build up new homes. And he got really sad and he goes, that sucks. He goes, I'll never be able to play in those woods again. I really care about nature, And that moment drove his life. And he got to use all of his skills, his analytical skills, his super smart guy, in math and science, to now apply those to his passion of the environment. And it just so happens to be in the oil and gas, right? So I shared with him, use your story. Why should you hire me? Well, let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, they tore down my favorite piece of my childhood, and it sucked. I hate bulldozers. Bulldozers suck. And they tore a piece of my life out, right? And kids don't get to enjoy the nature that was there. And so I'm here today applying because I know you guys are doing something about that. And I want to help protect the environment and I want to bring my passion and my skills with, math and science and I don't know, his PhD level. He's a big old nerd. And you guys are doing that. And when you can connect to yourself and through that and through the lens of a story, it's much more powerful than well, you guys are trying to protect the environment. I really love the environment, blah, blah, blah. It's whatever, another answer, right? And everybody says something like that because they know we're an environmental company. But when you can bring your personal story in and be willing to be a little bit vulnerable with it, they're going to see that you give a shit, that you really care. And they're like, okay, this guy stands out. I think he cares. And that's going to speak volumes above your grades. It's going to speak volumes around a lack of experience, because they're going to be like, this guy, Bob, gets it. He's going to work nights and weekends. Not that they're going to make you do that, but if he's on a project that needs to get done, this guy does it because he knows why he's there. He knows that he's going to do a good job. And that speaks volumes. And when you hear it, it's distinct and different than any other person that walks in that door. And they're going to be remembered.
That's awesome. That's really good advice, Brett. I love it. Stories, vulnerability, that makes a lot of sense. Brett, this was excellent. I love this workshop with you this evening. How can our students find out more about you? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you? How can they get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, so they definitely go to my website. It's bradfinkeldye.com. And that's a hard one to spell. I've had to master that my whole life, and I was born with it. So I have a vanity, or I have another URL, don't be a chicken, do what you love.com. And that redirects you over to my site. It's easy, it's memorable. It's a little bit longer than what I like, but the other one that I really wanted wasn't available. So this one's perfect. So don't be a chicken, do what you love.com. And that will get you to my site. And yeah, I appreciate the time here, man.
Also LinkedIn. You're also active on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
All my students are pretty active on LinkedIn because they're in this program and they're connecting with their mentor. But yeah, also on
LinkedIn's
LinkedIn.
good too.
Brett, thanks for being here. This was a great workshop. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.